We live now? All right. What's up, everybody? It's been a while since I was here last time. Welcome to Let's Be Blunt, the Christmas holiday edition. We're in the house with the festiveness. But, yeah, man, it's been a hell of a year, to say the least, for everyone, I think, across the country and across the world, but especially so in the cannabis space, for us as a company and ultimately as an industry. It's been wild. Lack of regulation, oversupply, ever-changing laws. It's been a real mess. We fared pretty well as a company, but as an industry, it's definitely in disarray. So, I've been searching for some better answers and things and looking what to do to survive the current storm and the forthcoming storms. And in all of my, networking and meeting or whatever, one of my great friends that I've known forever introduced me to our next guest. He has a pretty amazing background. I'm going to let him tell you about it. But we have in the studio today Ron Bienvenue. That's that correct?
Close enough.
Bienvenue. Bienvenue. And amazing young man. He hails out of New Orleans and Louisiana, also Miami, Florida. But I had the privilege of going down to New Orleans a few weeks back, a little over a month now, around Halloween, so a little longer than a month, I guess, around Halloween, and got to join this man. He was the king of the Boo Crew.
Crew of Boo Parade.
Crew of Brew Parade.
It's pretty cool.
The biggest Halloween parade in New Orleans. And, he was the king. He was the leader of the parade, and I was in the second float, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was so much fun. It was everything New Orleans promises to be, but then even more. But the reason me and this gentleman have been introduced to each other and will be working together in the future is he has made a career off of industries in disarray and turmoil. And I think that's what attracts you ultimately to this industry. So first off, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here in North Carolina, good old North Carolina. We've had him here for, this is his second time being with us, but he will be joining our company and helping us thrive and grow as a company. And let's get into it. Let's talk about your background. Let's talk about what interests you in this cannabis industry.
Sure.
And why are you here with us today?
Sure. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. It has been a very educational year for me as I stuck my nose into the cannabis space. Like you said, I think great opportunity comes from moments in time, and you can pick one horse and try to bet on the right horse, or you can pick trends, and my background has been more trends, and so I think there's a trend here in the cannabis space that you've got a complete industry in disarray. It's evolving into something that's going to be, I think, fundamental to the economy across a number of ways, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Just real quick, my background, though, I'm not a cannabis guy. I come from finance and technology. My first company I started in 1988. I was a kid. I was a hacker, self-taught programmer. I grew up in rural Louisiana in a small town, and taught myself how to write software in the 70s when I was really young, and before anybody knew what it was. And I was what I would call a hobbyist. I was not a business person. I was just fascinated with computers. And that turned out to be a pretty good idea in the 80s and 90s as that whole industry exploded. And it brought a lot of disruption to the global economy, and it's not dissimilar in some ways to what's happening in cannabis. Cannabis is a disruptive force. It's uniquely positioned between big tobacco, big alcohol, and big pharma. And that makes it fascinating to me. And those three giant industries are really struggling to figure out how to play this market. And we all know what's going on in the politics and all the good stuff. But so I went to college, ran out of money. I went to LSU, ran out of money. Went to the Army. When I got to the Army, they said, "What do you know how to do?" I said, "I know how to hack code." They said, "What the hell does that mean?" And so I spent most of my illustrious military career at Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is the Signal Corps, and got out of the Army, went back to college, got a chance to visit a friend in New York City, so I took a train up from New Orleans to New York. And I never left. I walked out of Penn Station, and I was like, this is where I belong, man. And that was, 1987. And started my first company in 88 with a friend of mine. I I met in the Army, a guy named Tori Nelson, and I had this idea. So we hacked basically Hewlett-Packard's encapsulated PostScript, and we created the first fax-based newsletters in the world. The first ones that had fonts. They were text-based, but the first ones that were kind of fancy. Wow. Anyway, did that, hacked. I mean, literally slept on the floor of a condemned building for 3 years. And kind of funny, we named our company the Veslash Group. And it was named after a pimp on an episode of Starsky and Hutch way back when, Want to Hug Your Bear's Buddies. So we had answered the phone. The Veslash Group, it sounded so important. And it was just two kids sleeping on a condemned floor in a condemned building. But
the pimping.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
And so we sold that company in '91 to a division of McGraw-Hill, and I worked for them for a year, and then I started my next company in '92. It's called SageMaker. Got kind of big. Learned to buy companies, which I thought was quite fascinating. So I bought a bunch of companies, and I sold that company in 2001. And then since 2002, I've been primarily just an investor in what I call special situations, which basically means something's fucked up. If if I show up, it's probably not going swimmingly. Right, so hence my interest here. The last notable thing I'll say, I've had a fun career. I've done every dumb thing I can think of, and on Wall Street, I've done hostile takeovers of publicly traded companies. I've done bankruptcies, reverse mergers, all kinds of craziness. But where I have found that I have made my most money and been most successful is in times when things are really hard. And so you might get a kick. I gave a speech at Yale in 2001, and I walked out on the stage in Yale, and I'm just country boy from South Louisiana, no college degree, none of this shit. And I walked out there and I said, wow, Yale, and Joe Lieberman, the senator from Connecticut, had arranged it. And so I'm out on there and I said, I'm willing to bet everybody in this room tonight, every single one of you is smarter than I am. And it's an honor for a country boy from South Louisiana to come talk about what it takes to start a business. And it was a colorful speech, so colorful in that I was never invited back. But at one point, well, I'll tell you why I wasn't invited back. But first I said, you're all smarter than me, but I bet you not many of you are tougher than I am. And I think in order to build a business, toughness is the thing, the grit that it takes to take a punch. And watching what you guys have built over the years, as studying it, as I've been privileged to be able to do in the last few months, you can't put a price on that. There's no class at Yale on getting your ass whipped, and so
definitely needs to be. But
definitely needs to be. Yeah. And so I finished the speech, which was quite colorful. Right. I finished it with this. I said, and they're all in business school, right? And I said, to me, business is like sex. If you have to read a book on how to do it, you're probably not going to be very good at it. You might want to just stick your face in it and figure it out.
Right.
And so that's my background, and stumbled, from industry to industry. Like I said, the last thing I'll say is I wrote a book in 2009, and I can assure you it is not the best book you ever read, but it's the best one I ever wrote, so I'm going with that. And it's called The Fourth Shock. And basically, I argued that there were 4 major information technology events that changed the global economy and human society. And I can walk you through them, but I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not a great book. It's just, it was my ideas on where the world was headed. And one of the things I said in the book that has resonated over the last 12 years or whatever is that in many cases, the information embedded in a supply chain is worth more than the goods and services in a supply chain. And what that means is that, and it was actually on a chapter on Enron, so it was what Enron had done well, one time I was giving a speech in Paris, and my lawyers were there, and I referenced WorldCom, Enron, Drexel Burnham. When I got up the stage, the lawyer says, "Do you have any heroes who didn't go to jail?" I'm like they were the ones that shook it up.
If you're doing it right,
yeah. So I wrote this book, and it's held the test of time well. And so the main thing that I take from the book is that data is becoming a new asset class, and it is leverageable, and it's way too much of a esoteric probably conversation for this presentation. But the bottom line is the confluence of big data, AI, and blockchain are creating the technical foundations for an entire new asset class to emerge. And that asset class is going to change human society once again. And I'll give you one quick example, and then we'll move on from it.
Sure.
In 2009, Northern Telecom filed for bankruptcy. When they filed for bankruptcy, Their accountants were Deloitte and Touche, and they listed their property, plant, equipment, and operations at $3.2 billion, and they listed their intangible assets at $147 million. 3 years later, when they come out of bankruptcy, the company is sold to Verizon mostly for $3.5 billion. But the intangible assets that Deloitte and Touche said was worth $100 million turned out to be worth $4.5 billion at auction. So these guys were sitting on an asset that was not on their balance sheet that if they knew it was worth $4 billion, they'd have never filed for bankruptcy. So my contention is that the accounting industry is fundamentally broken. I can make the same argument about the educational system in the U.S. today. Yes. But you take a look at cannabis, and what's sorely lacking in the industry is quality information and pricing information. So every time a new state opens up, you have overproduction of your base commodity. I was in Oklahoma studying this, a few months ago, and I was stationed in Kansas for a little while when I was in the Army, and it dawned on me. I'm like, what's wrong with the cannabis space? I said, one of the fundamental things that's wrong with it is the lack of information and pricing data around the commodity, the base commodity. So the joke I made was, how much wheat is grown in Kansas? It's a lot of wheat. Right. How much wheat is consumed in Kansas? Almost none. And so without a global commodities market, but you can grow wheat in Kansas and sell it to Africa or to Australia. Right. So that's what's sorely missing in this industry. So the challenge for me, and we're looking at an operation like Crown Town and others, is how do you get an asynchronous informational advantage that you can use to make smarter, better decisions faster than everybody else as this industry is going from this period of chaos and disruption to a period of normalization, which I believe will come. But it might be 2 years, might be 10 years, might be 20 years.
Right.
But there's just too much value in the cannabis plant across multiple, as I said, industries. It's recreational, but there's also medicinal. And so it's going to be a very interesting industry to be a part of when it matures, because I'm a pretty big student of economic history, and I don't know that I could point to any time when a disruptive function like cannabis or technology in the 80s and 70s, when it becomes normalized, right, you're going to have three giant industries competing to dominate it, and those industries rarely compete. I mean, big pharma doesn't often compete with big alcohol, right, and big tobacco, but right, you're going to see these giants dancing to consolidate. So if you can build a sizable footprint, profitable business that's healthy, like you've been able to do over the years, by dint of will. I mean, right, it's not like
that's all we got.
Yeah, there's a reason why you're that big. You keep getting hit in the head,
right,
and you
I've
just keep
taken
coming.
a lot of hits over the years. Is there anything I'm good at? Is taking an ass whooping for sure.
That's for sure. Well, that's what it takes.
Right.
But that's what excites me, is that you have this disrupted, chaotic industry where big players are going bankrupt all the time. California is a train wreck, but everybody knows underlying all that is something positive for society and something positive economically. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part. I've been learning. I don't pretend to know cannabis. I'm not even a big cannabis user, but I'm fascinated with the industry and the people in it. And you've certainly, Santa Claus himself. Right. It's been a pleasure.
Well, and I, similar backgrounds to you. I've just, I guess, dumb luck and ill will, and just, just seeing where life takes us and what interests us, and this became a passion for me early on. I realized early on we were being lied to. I realized early on that the harmful side effects they claimed were just not there. The 80s, the eggs frying in the pan. This is your
this is your brain,
right? And I remember that no one ever says I want to be a junkie when I grow up. And I'm like, well, but it's a hell of an industry, and we've survived this year. That's with all the mess we dealt with in South Carolina, with our store getting raided, employee facing charges, you name it. We got pending legislation across the board that could either help us or harm us. Nothing new, but this year seemed to all come to a head all at once. And I'm not a religious person, but I started praying to any God that would listen. And, what are we going to do? Because I don't want to leave this industry. I think I was built for it. I think I think it's for me. I can tell you, horse racing didn't work out for me. I'm a little too big for that. And, corporate America, same thing. Wasn't my thing. But I love this industry. And I kept saying, I have the knowledge to get us this far, but I don't have the knowledge to get us beyond this. And it became, 5-6 years ago when people were getting this industry, all you really had to do was open the doors, and you at least could survive. And now with the market share, the amount of stores that are out there, the lack of regulation, the oversupply, the people like you talk about, and we've all seen it in this industry, people that acquired millions to start their company and they ran through it like it was never going to stop, and they came and went, and now you have a new batch of companies coming in. But, Ron's perspective and his background and his knowledge, I think, is the exact piece us as a company is missing. And I think ultimately the industry is. I think we have kind of two groups of people that Ron helps identify as well. We have like the hobbyist people that enjoy cannabis and got in it and got lucky, and now they're wondering what next. And then you have the Ivy League types with the great education on the economy and business and how business works. But I think a marriage of the two is what we're looking for, because it's that we're in uncharted territories. We have moments in time in history where we can go back and pre-prohibition for alcohol, problems that the tobacco industry's gone through, pharmaceutical, you name it. I think we're ultimately going to, at least in some ways, follow in those same paths. But all of this is inherently brand new, and all these paths are newly, freshly walked.
Yep. Well, you bring up the hobbyist. It's one of the things I talk about, is that whenever an industry goes through disruption, take software in 1979. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a kid. I was just bored. I just thought it was interesting. I was not a business person. I didn't have not a single moment that I think, oh, I'm going to go build a software company.
Sure.
There was no such thing.
Right.
And so I just thought it was cool. So did Bill Gates. So did Steve Jobs.
Right.
There was a lot of hobbyists, but pretty soon it became clear that this hobby of ours could be turned into real money. And the same thing went through cannabis. The people who were in cannabis before it was legal, these people are passionate and they just like their stuff. But then when it became legal in some places, there's an angle towards a business. So you start with, I think, all periods of disruption in economics going to go through 4 phases. It's maybe a simplification, but that's kind of how I see it. You have the hobbyists who are just in it because they think it's cool. Most of those do not turn out to be good business people, and their businesses fail fairly quickly. You're a hobbyist who didn't fail. I was a hobbyist who was, like I said, tough enough, not smart,
right.
Tough enough
yeah.
to get my ass beat and willing to sleep on a condemned floor of a condemned building for years, because I had no other choice.
Right.
So you go from the hobbyist then I say the next phase is what I call the shysters. And the shysters are the smart, fast money Wall Street guys who play on passion and not business. They play on passion. So they go out and they raise a big fund, 100 million, a billion, whatever the number is, and they go call up all the retirees and say, hey, put some money in, this is the next big thing. And they go and piss that money away as fast as they can. And some of them might survive, some of them don't. But it's really kind of shitty people you have to deal with in that phase. Yeah. And I saw it in software, and I think I think cannabis has gone through similar.
Right.
But now you're at phase 3, and the phase 3 is where what I call the professionals are showing up. People who understand capital markets, who understand how to finance businesses, and how to grow them, not just get them started. I think you're starting to see an influx, and I can tell you, there's a guy in California named Hank Casillas. He's got this Rolano. That guy ran.
Great guy. Yeah.
He ran CVS west of the Mississippi. This guy is not a cannabis like, woo, let's go have some fun. This guy's a machine. And so you're starting to see those kinds of people show up, and I think that's a mark that the industry's reaching a new level of credibility and sustainability, and I think it's a tipping point. And the way I explain tipping points to people, by the way, I always thought this was interesting, is that if you take a scale, like a Libra scale,
right.
and you put 50 pounds on this side and nothing on this side, the scale's like this. You put 1 pound up here, nothing happens. You can put 49 pounds up here and nothing will happen. But if you put that 1 more pound, it moves. And if you put 1 more pound, it's inverted. And so the trick in life is not to see the obvious. It's to see the 49 pounds sitting there and position yourself at that time for this transition. And that's where I think this industry's at. I think it's reaching a level of acceptability that is unprecedented in its history. Right. And I think as you see more and more states come online, it's just going to have this tidal wave effect. So the challenge is to get through this period of disruption and continue to build a slow and steady great business so that when the final pound is placed up here, you're in a position to move. And that's why I think I just want to I'll tip my hat to you and your team for getting through that. And the hard part is ahead, but you survived.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of skill and a lot of luck, honestly. And typically in this industry, what I can tell you, what I've seen in the 6 years time that we've been in it, is the immediate allure of this is new, fresh, the legality of it or whatever, and everybody rushed in. I wouldn't say everybody, a good percentage of people rushed in. Everybody ran the CBD train. It started fizzling out, especially with so many people getting it. Every grocery store, gas station, you name it, carrying CBD products. And it ultimately died. And then along came COVID. Yeah. And then when COVID came, it was this rejuvenation of the industry because everybody was sitting home looking for something to do. They were looking for relief of medical symptoms and couldn't get to their doctor or to their pharmacy because of the shutdowns. So we saw this influx again, and then we started seeing it fizzle out again, and then along came Delta 8 products, and then again the rejuvenation, and now the fizzle, and then now with the THCA products we got the rejuvenation. And ultimately all this was for us in the beginning was to be a placeholder. When Dan and Lindsay and I started this business 6 years ago almost, it was a placeholder, same deal. All we needed to do was survive until legalization happened. I didn't think we'd be 6 years later still waiting on it, but who knows. But we never saw it going as big as it did, and all of a sudden we're like, oh shit, we're now business owners. And originally it was going to be us three holding down one store, and that was out the window the first week. I think we hired 5 people the first week or something. And, now with 4 stores, and we're going to be bringing more on, it's now business. And we got to the extent of our knowledge, and what we're seeing now in this industry is almost a failure again. A little bit of both. You got people that are kind of bringing in new investors, new life to it because they see the potential. But then we're getting a lot of ones that are just failing. And what we're hoping to do in this company and what we see coming is, get organized, marry the two of the streets intelligence, the legacy people such as myself that, have kind of been in it and had the knowledge of how things are, and bringing people in like Ron that can help us get to where things are going to be. But, just yesterday, I think the Wall Street Journal, the day before yesterday, ran an article on how much trouble this industry's in. So one of the questions I got to you, especially not being in the industry, how does one pitch this to an investor with so many risks and so many uncertainties? What would be your elevator pitch to someone if they're saying, well, I don't know, I've read these Wall Street Journal articles, the industry's tanking, whatever, I don't want to take the risk. What would you say to those people?
So there are different kinds of investors. I teach a class at Tulane in the business school in the fall, and I always tell the students, an entrepreneur's job primarily is to turn uncertainty into risk. Risk is measurable. Risk is a mathematical probability. Uncertainty is we have just no idea. And so investors generally hate uncertainty. Look at Wall Street. Whenever there's uncertainty in the Fed or uncertainty, Wall Street goes crazy. So uncertainty scares investors. So the first wave of investors that hit during the hobbyist and the shyster periods, these are people who they're gamblers. They are not afraid of uncertainty, right? They'll just throw it in there, and they generally using other people's money, so they don't really give a shit. Right. The old saying, nobody washes a rental car.
Right.
And so if it's other people's money, screw it. Right. And so they gamble and they throw money around and they trying to find what sticks. And so those people are not generally the people I associate with when I'm investing. I have no problem with gambling. That's your business. Right. Crypto, for example, I've never really invested in crypto because to me it was just gambling, and there's nothing wrong with gambling. It's just not for me. And so I think the first thing you have to do if you want to raise money in this space is you got to know which investor to talk to. And everybody will listen to you if you're an entrepreneur like yourself, because people are curious, and investors in particular, people who professionally invest, they want to know what's going on, but they're not going to invest, most of them. And so what I would tell an investor today is we have breached the period of complete uncertainty. The Wild West, it's still a little wild, but there is normalization happening. And now we can start to move from thinking about this as just a prayer to a probability. And so I think you have enough critical mass in the industry. There is risk. There is big risk. There's political risk. There is the law, but so you're looking at a class. So the first thing I would tell an entrepreneur is find the right kinds of investors. Don't waste your time with guys who just want to hear your brain. And so you got to be smart about that. And you need people who are comfortable taking longer term perspectives with high volatility. So family offices are great. Individuals who have a lot of money. The institutional investors, like the venture capitalists, I'm not a big fan at this stage for them. There are some great venture capital firms, but most of them are filled with idiots. And they just, what I call spreadsheet jockeys, they just don't know anything. I can tell you a very colorful story, but we don't have time today, about one of my employees was caught masturbating at his desk, and GE was on my board, General Electric, and they wanted to know what I was going to do about it. I'm like, I don't know. What do you do about a guy?
Give him a napkin.
Get him a lock on his office door? I don't know. Right. And so, so.
Hey, man, I knew I should have locked that door.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I would just say be smart about who you approach. But there's money now, and there's smart money starting to circle this. There's smart money around the real estate angle in this business. There's smart money around the retail angles in this business. I think the agricultural side, which I grew up on a farm, so I'm very familiar, I think, with the economics of agriculture. One day that's going to be a massive play. But it's really tough as long as you have balkanized markets. Right. Until you can sell all the stuff you're producing in Oklahoma to Kansas without breaking laws, it's going to be a ways away. So I think the real power in a pitch, I would say, is we are building. If I was an entrepreneur in this space pitching, I would say we're building an information gathering machine. We will have an asynchronous informational advantage over not only what's working but also what's not working. We will fail faster than anybody else because we'll have superior information flows, and we'll use those information flows to pick up companies that are struggling. So I think that if you have a strong M&A story with a real estate backed story and a proven track record in retail, that is a winning formula for raising substantial amounts of money in this particular stage of the market, in my opinion. Right. And that's why I'm excited to be here and backing you guys.
Yeah, same. Because that's, you touched on that. And that is definitely one of the biggest issues right now is being able to cross state lines. And people don't realize this, even in states that are fully recreationally legal, such as Oregon and California. I always use that as a great example. Washington, Oregon, California, all up the West Coast there. Every state fully recreationally legal. You can have whatever you want in your possession on either side of that state line, but the minute you cross that state line, it's a federal offense. Yeah. And it becomes a federal issue. And that's what we're facing. At Teron's point, some of the best cannabis ever grown, especially outdoors out in California, they have more than an abundance of it. They have over-regulation, over-taxation, and they can't get it outside of state lines legally. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's an opportune time here in this hemp industry because currently in the hemp industry, state lines don't apply to us. Mm-hmm. So, that is a huge problem in this industry we're seeing. And then we have things that we're coming upon between now and midterm next year. The current administration has promised to reschedule cannabis from a Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which many of us are crying help because that's probably one of the worst things we could do. However, it does pull it off of federal prohibition officially. It's still highly regulated by pharmaceutical industry. It has to be prescribed by a doctor, dispensed by a pharmacy or whatever. And currently right now, I read in the headlines, I think Florida and Georgia are jockeying for position to be the first state to dispense cannabis through a pharmacy. And, we're seeing all these issues all over, and a lot of it is uncertainty. But what I do know is this product is not going anywhere. It's been around for hundreds of years, if not more. The demand is higher than ever. And from what I've read and seen too, we've only really tapped into about 5 to 10% total buyer's market for this industry.
No doubt.
And most people are fearful of it simply of the legality. And that's what I hear over and over again. Well, I never tried it because it's illegal, and I didn't want to take the risk for my job or, probation or whatever they got going on. But I think once we see that switch of just saying, okay, it's legal now, we're going to see a huge influx in the industry. And if we're not prepared for that as an industry, you're going to get ran over and ate up and everything else. So, meeting Ron is, if I had to sit down and teach him what he already knew, I couldn't teach him as well as he already knows it. And, it's interesting to hear that perspective because I'm seeing all these, I've said it from the beginning. So there's too many people in this industry that should not be in business. They just simply knew a little bit about cannabis or a lot bit about cannabis and got some money or whatever, and now they're realizing, oh shit, I need to be a business person too. So, who knows what the future holds of when these laws will change or whatever, or how they'll change. But all we know is that we're trying to get our foundation put together and our structure put together. And, ultimately we're going to be looking for those weaker companies that are failing to do this. And even in preliminary talks with companies about what our kind of plans were, people are jumping at this opportunity. I'm hearing it left and right, man, we're barely surviving, or, we have a great product, we can't get it out, we can't get it distributed or whatever. Beyond the issues that I know and hear of and the ones you've identified, do you see any forthcoming issues that like a train approaching that nobody's really seeing? Or
in the Army we have a saying, it's the bullet you don't hear that kills you.
Right.
So it's hard to know what you don't know.
Right.
Know. So the Farm Bill is a radical, could have a radical impact on the industry.
Sure.
If you think about it, there's two ways to solve problems generally. Complex problems, uncertainty. There is, let's just say, my house in New Orleans, for example, overlooks the Mississippi River. Let's say I said to you,
Beautiful
Mike,
space. Yep.
we gotta, you've been there.
Yep.
You gotta go across this river. I need to move people across this river. You say, okay, people, not natural gas, not trucks. Yeah, just people. Okay, you'd start on this side of the river, you'd figure out where you want to go on the other side of the river, and then you would engineer a solution. You would use your brain, you would use math, and you would come up with this solution to move people from this side of the Mississippi River to the other side. That's an engineered solution. The problem in cannabis is you don't know the future end state. You know the current state is chaos.
Right.
And you know the future state eventually at some point will be normalization. But you do not know when that will happen and in what form that will take. So the question for an entrepreneur is, and an investor is, if you believe that cannabis is going to be a normalized industry that is going to be fought over by three giant industries, first time in economic history, at least that I am aware of,
right,
and which can create amazing value. Just imagine Pfizer bidding against Anheuser-Busch for a company.
Right.
It's going to be wild. But you don't know when that's going to happen, and you don't know what form it's going to take. So what is the proper method for moving from a state of uncertainty to a future state of normalization, but you don't know how long? And Mother Nature gives us an example of this in what's called the theory of punctuated equilibrium. The theory of punctuated equilibrium says evolution almost never occurs. Evolution is a bad idea from a species perspective 99.9% of the time. Because the environment in which a creature is born is stable, generally.
Right.
Black bear in the Arctic, bad idea.
Right.
And you pray can see you coming. A white bear in the jungle, bad idea.
Right.
And so those rarely reproduce, and so most mutations fail. However, when periods where there is a massive disruption to the status quo, the software revolution in the 70s and 80s, the cannabis revolution over the last 12 years. When you have this impact to the status quo, it's called a period of punctuation. All of a sudden, it's chaos. And the creatures that can mutate the fastest have an advantage. Because think of a mutation as nature's attempt to gather information about the current state and future state of where things are going. And so as Mother Nature is mutating, trying to find how life can stabilize in this changing environment to this new environment, from an ice age to a non-ice age or vice versa.
Right.
Well, the same thing's happening here. And so as an investor, you've got to take an information accumulation approach to winning in this space. And that's why I think what you've built and your team have built is you touch all the key pieces where if you could have a critical mass of information about what's working and not working and use that information and capital markets to be able to access capital to grow quickly when you need to, stay nimble, but you got to go in when it's time to go. That's the model that I think is going to work over the next 5 years, 10 years, and you can survive, thrive, but it's a little messy. It's not it's not an engineered solution. It's an evolutionary solution. So I get excited about that because I've seen it happen. Again, you saw it in the '80s with junk bonds. You've seen it in the '80s with technology. It's a great time to be an investor. I think. I think most of the hobbyists who are never going to be great business people, and those are rare, but they happen. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they happen. It's getting cleaned up, as you said. You're separating the
And forgive me if I'm wrong or not, but from what I'm hearing, I think from you and others, is we're in a time in history, in a place in history where more people are sitting with cash on the sidelines than ever. You got any idea to that about how people they're scared about the traditional investments? And
dude, if I could count every CEO who just told me, if I just had $10 more million, I swear I won't screw it up again.
Right.
And people always blame money, but I'm gonna tell you, as a kid who grew up with no money, none, zero.
Right.
And if you have a great idea, and you have the integrity, the toughness, and the brains to execute, there is no shortage of money. There is so much money in the world, it staggers the mind, to be honest. But there are not a lot of great ideas.
Right.
And even a great idea, in most cases, will only get you shot. I'll give you an example.
Right.
About 7 years ago, I find myself on the board of directors of a company called Salon.com, Salon Media Group. And on that board was a guy named John Warnock. John is the founder of Adobe. And he's a very wealthy guy. He passed away recently. And, he's a lot older than I was. And so we end up on the same board of directors. In the 80s, my first company, basically what we did was we created Adobe Acrobat. We hacked Hewlett-Packard's encapsulated PostScript, took a print job, turned it into a bitmap, dumped it to a fax board, and we had the first fax-based newsletters that were all graphics and stuff. So I'm thinking I'm really smart, And so I'm sitting with John, and other guys, and we're sitting at the dinner, and it turns into a big dick contest, right? Like, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that, and everybody's talking shit. And I make the mistake of saying, hey, John, I invented Adobe Acrobat. He looks at me and he goes, yeah? I said, yeah. He goes, I tell him the story. He goes, how much money you make from that? I said, I made a couple $1 million. He goes, I'm worth $12 billion. No one gives a fuck who invents anything. It's who makes money from it.
Right.
And so this industry, there's a lot of great companies here. There's a lot of great experiments that have failed, but that are data rich.
Right.
And I think, like I said, you've demonstrated the ability to evolve your business. You were going through all the phases earlier. You went from CBD to Delta 8, Delta 9. And that's what it takes. Nimbleness. I mean, who knew a guy your size is that nimble?
I'm telling you.
And
you learn something new every day.
A dancing fucking bear, right?
Right. I'm telling you.
And so
I'll do whatever it takes.
But that's what it takes, and so that's the integrity that I think you and your team can be very proud of.
Sure.
And I think we can take it to the next level. So I'm excited to be, just affiliated with you guys and being able to be part of this journey with you, because you've frankly taken the worst of the beatings.
Yeah.
I think.
Hopefully.
You never know. I'm not afraid of taking a beating either.
My wife is not afraid to throw out some beatings either. So, so it keeps me in check, keeps me intact. But yeah, I'm excited too about where we're headed. I think we're heading into some definitely uncertain times of cannabis. I honestly, I'm going to make this prediction live and on camera. I think we're in the final years of this bullshit. I think on the federal level, we're at least getting movement. I think the Biden administration is trying to do anything they can to survive at this point. And I think they're using it as like a last trick to try to boost the young voters' vote. In the end, to reschedule. But right now, I think we're at 67 senators and representatives that are championing this new bill called the States Act 2 bill. And that ultimately removes cannabis from federal prohibition and leaves it up to the states to make the decision. So I think we're finally here. You know, I think my parents were talking, you know, in the 60s and 70s. It's like, well, legalization's right around the corner. And now here we are 30, 40 years later. We're still fighting the same bullshit. But, you know, it's an absolute honor to meet you and your background. And I'm really excited of what this holds for us and the industry as well as the company. And I think it's going to take more of this. I think it's going to be a marriage of multiple colorful backgrounds to really bring this thing together. You know, it takes a whole village. I'd love to say I could love to take credit for everything I've done, but I can tell you right now I'm just a pretty face for it. And dumb luck and a lot of people around me that are equally as passionate have gotten us through it. And, you know, if you're watching the show today and you think you're in this category of, hey, my company's in having some issues and some turmoils or whatever, holler at us. You know, let's talk acquisition. Let's talk teaming up. You know, I think there's plenty of space for everybody to eat at the table. And, you know, we would love to combine if made necessary and create a much larger, much more powerful, much more nimble company. So anyone watching this that has insight, we'd love to hear your comments and things below. If you got questions for Ron, be sure to write those as well. Ron, if they're looking to find you can't have Ron, he's ours. But if you're looking to find Ron's book, or if they're looking to learn more about you, where would they go to find you? Or
appreciate that. Yeah, the book is called The Fourth Shock, like The Fourth Shock, and it's on Amazon. You can get it there, Kindle, and to reach out to us. I can give you my email address is ron@silverbackinc.com. Silverback is one of the companies I'm invested in. It's the one that's focused on data as an asset, and I think there's a big role for Silverback in the cannabis space as being what I would envision is the data repository for the partners in our family of companies to execute more efficiently and better. I'll close with this. I was asked not too long ago in Miami. I was on the beach with a bunch of dudes, and they were like, "What's a recession like?" And if you think about it, because they're all young, and they were basically making fun of me, like I'm old enough to have been through a recession,
or depression.
Yeah, exactly. And you know the difference between a recession and depression. A recession is your neighbor's out of work. Depression is you're out of work. And you know the. And the cannabis industry is going through a recession. I mean, it truly is. The overall economy isn't. But the thing about recessions is it's a negative time, I guess, in general. I said, look, a bull market, when everybody's throwing money at things and growing, it's like the game of poker. You get a couple of cards, you look at them, you fold. You look at them, you fold. And basically, in a bull market, the biggest cost risk is opportunity cost for an entrepreneur. You don't want to tie yourself up with a stupid idea or a stupid situation where you can't grow. So Silicon Valley says fail fast. That's a very smart advice in a bull market. A bear market, though, is more like the game of chess. You get 16 pieces, I get 16 pieces. There's 8x8 grid, and there's no luck. So you separate people who are actually competent from those who were lucky. When I raised my first venture capital in the 90s, I had a PowerPoint presentation. And the guy says to me, "Wow, that's a good presentation." My company's called SageMaker. He goes, "We'll give you $10 million. If you can come back with a spreadsheet next week, we'll give you 20." And so, so if you had a PowerPoint and a spreadsheet, you didn't have to have a brain. You just had to have I
really messed up.
So cannabis was a lot like that, right?
Sure.
If you had a story and there was a lot of fast money, I think we're going through a much needed recession in the vertical, in the industry.
Correction, if you will.
Correction, exactly. And I think coming out of that, though, you're going to have viable companies that are going to compete in more and more traditional ways as this thing matures. And like I said, I think you've built a phenomenal foundation, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Same. And what he's telling you is open your checkbooks and write us a check because we got something great. But I think we weathered the storm as a company. I think the people that survive the industry in the coming year will probably be long-term players. I think we'll also see a mass exodus of those that are going to be exposed in the coming year. I think it's the perfect storm to weed out, pun intended, those that just don't belong. And, in all seriousness, as a company, we're going to be making huge announcements in the coming months. We have a project we're working on for the last couple of years that we'll be announcing probably the first of next year that just simply isn't being done in the industry. And it's going to be a game changer from top to bottom. And we're expanding. We're franchising. And we have a lot going on. And if you're interested in jumping in this space, if you think you got something to offer, if you're interested in franchising a store, if you're interested in investing in what we're about to build, please reach out. I promise you it's going to be a hell of an opportunity. We've taken a lot of licks. Can't promise, funds that you'll make certain amounts of money, but I can tell you that we got a bunch of hard-headed assholes behind the scenes that's refusal to fail, and that's really what it takes in this industry. Ron's one tough son of a bitch, and it's an honor to know you and meet you. And you just meet people in life. You know that they belong, and you've been waiting on them to show up. And I think that's what Ron is for me. We're both Scorpios, and
we like long walks on the beach.
That's it.
We hold hands occasionally, but
we both enjoy crazy women. No, but it's awesome, man. And I'm gonna leave everyone with this: together, divided we fall, together we flourish. And I think too many people in this industry is divided. There's too many people within the industry fighting each other where we used to fight the man. Now we have medical marijuana. Now we have recreational marijuana. Now we have the hemp industry. And then we have the purists that don't want any of it to exist. So, we're more divided than ever. And everybody's jockeying for position and thinking that they got their own agenda on the thing and really don't want help or collaborate with anyone. And those people will fail. And it's going to take at least some collaborative work to get through these toughest times. But if we don't come together and continue to fight these laws and fight for what's best for the industry, then we're going to fail. Yeah. So lose the egos. Let's quit being so divisional, and let's work together, man. Let's bring this Christmas wish home, Hanukkah wish, or whatever you celebrate. It's time. It's 2023. Let's end this prohibition. Let's properly regulate. Let's properly set the industry up to thrive and win, and not this half-assed, half-baked approach that happened since 2018, where we got vague rules to play by, and they're like, "Good luck."
Yeah. Good luck with that.
So
you asked me earlier, elevator pitch for an investor. So here's an elevator pitch for participants in the industry. As Mike just said, I think united, you have a better chance of building a sustainable, long-term value proposition in business. And what we're looking for is to build a coalition, a family of companies in various parts of the country that can all benefit from each other. We start by sharing information flows so that we know what's working and not working. We share best practices across all the operations. So it's time now to build a mature industry, and if you own a company and you want to be part of a family that's looking to scale and grow and create long-term value, we'd love to hear from you.
That's awesome. I dig it. We look forward to it. Go buy Ron's book. It's a great book. This man's smart beyond his years, even though he's old as hell.
And do not oversell how good the book is. The book is held up well. I'm proud of
That's
it.
That's a great knowledge.
Yeah.
A big thing is foreseeing what people can't see that's right in front of them, and I think people underestimate some of these massive changes have. And data is one that you touched on it's huge. People don't realize the value in it, and it's literally the most valuable asset we have on this planet.
And people just don't know how to unlock it. They get very myopic about what data is, and it's not their fault. It's just the history. But like I said, I really believe that the monetization and assetization of data. Think about the Northern Telecom example I gave. You had an asset that Deloitte and Touche said was worth $100 million, and it turned out to be worth $4 billion.
Right.
If you did that to every balance sheet in every company on the world, you would create this giant asset class, and there'd be no offsetting liabilities. So you're effectively deleveraging the global economy, and that's coming.
Yeah.
And cannabis, because it's so fragmented at the operational level across all the sectors, small informational advantages can lead to large outcomes of success. And that's what I think we can help everybody in the industry, everybody who joins the family. We can help us all grow. Like you said, it's a big pie. It's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
And, I had my first kid. It's like you love a kid, you can't love something more than that. But when you have a second kid, you don't take love from the first kid and give it to the second one. You literally make love.
Right.
You create love.
Making love's what brought the second kid.
And capitalism at its finest is exactly the same. You create wealth. You don't have to take it from somebody else to have it. You can create wealth. And that's what's about to happen in this industry. And that's why I'm so excited to be part of it.
Same. Well, for all of those out there, we're going to wrap up 2023 finally. What a year. It's been the most challenging year and the most promising, gifting year I've ever had in my life. Having a son, going through every challenge as possible with law enforcement and politics. But, brought me Ron, my long-lost dad. And, it's a beautiful thing. If I were comfortable this year and we didn't go through the challenges, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about the growth we're about to get. And I read something the other day, and I'll leave you with this. It talks about buffalo and bison are the only animals known in the world that head towards a big storm, like a snowstorm or whatever, because they're smart enough to know if you head towards it, you're going to get through it quicker than anybody else. So I see us as two big buffalo bisons headed into the storm, and I'm here for it. And, what a year, folks. 2024 is going to be nothing short of spectacular for this industry. There's so much movement. It's not going to look the same this time next year, regardless of where it goes. I think we're on the verge of a huge economy commodity that's coming, and either get on board or get left behind. Whether you love or hate cannabis, it's here to stay.
Yeah.
Ron, thanks for being here, as always. Thanks for being a part of this. We're going to do a follow-up to show you how right we were in the coming months. And, again, if you want to be part of it, man, join it. Like and subscribe our channel. Follow us at letsbeblunt.org or on YouTube at Let's Be Blunt. We're the ones that's not Montel Williams. Shout out to Montel Williams. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Ron, for joining us. I hope everyone out there has a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. I hope you have some Festivus, sometimes to chill, sometimes to be with the family. Let's reunite. Let's get these years behind us. Let's start off strong and grow in the next year. And thanks, Ron. And as always, peace, love, cannabis. Thanks, everyone.
Well,
thanks, Ron. That was great, man.
Appreciate
you, man.
That was great fun.